Live show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe. Well, greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sid, and tonight on Into the Fringe, we are joined by author, investigator, and researcher of paranormal humanoids, Albert Rosales, as we dive into his book, Humanoid Encounters, The Others Among Us, 2020 to 2022. Born in Cuba, Albert Rosales migrated to the U.S. in 1966. He had several unusual incidents as a man while living in Cuba, and such incidents continued as an adult in the U.S. Rosales became interested in unusual phenomena and UFOs at an early age, but soon directed his focus to the crux of the phenomena, the humanoids, entities, extraterrestrials, UFOnauts, etc. He began collecting data on such encounters from worldwide sources in the late 80s. He currently has a database of close to 30,000 entries, which is updated and corrected daily, and has published 16 books to date. Welcome back, my friend, to Into the Fringe, Albert Rosales.
Hi there, everybody. I'm glad to be back. Cardinal Sid.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Into the Fringe.
How have you been?
Okay. Been kind of a hectic month so far, but all those balloons being shut down, I know. I was driving one of them.
Weird.
Yeah, no. God knows, all of a sudden, they deny Roswell, and then 1 month they shoot down 4 UFOs.
Yeah, one of these days.
Yeah,
I guess. I just wanted to apologize in advance to everybody. I have horrible allergies, and it sounds like I have a cold, but I don't. It's just post-nasal drip, so we'll get through it together. All right, so let's say hello to the gang we have in chat. Let's see. First was Canadian Spider-Man. Hail. Radioactive is a channel member and is here. Rui Goncalves, hail. Phantom Boomer is in the house.
Hail.
Phantom Boomer. The Lost Tales, welcome. Welcome. The Bodhisattva Kid. It's a little Red Dwarf joke.
I couldn't pronounce that name now.
Well, that's because it's...
Hindu, ain't it?
Hindi and or Buddhist. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Maybe both. Nicholas Horton is here.
Oh,
hail.
Okay.
PS2 Chipper is here. Darius Munchausen, of course. Ari is here. Says, welcome, Albert.
Thank you.
And that looks like that's about all we have at the moment. So let's go ahead and dig in. At first, before we do, I just wanted to let people know that I first ran across Albert's online database of humanoid encounters, and I just was stuck reading these entries for 3 days in a row. I couldn't tear myself away, and I didn't even scratch the surface. For now, Albert's books are available on Amazon. And remember, stay until the end of the show when we'll be giving away an autographed copy of one of Albert's books.
And it'll be a surprise book. I will choose the book, and when you get it, you'll see which one it is.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to issue a little bit of a trigger warning. Albert always brings the spooky, which is one of the reasons he's a fan favorite. But many of these cases, while not involving violence, can be scary and even terrifying. This is not creepy pasta. These are actual documented cases, so you have been warned. Albert, while we're waiting for people to roll in, can you tell us about the different case types, what they mean, where they come from, and which ones you added?
Well, we're talking about close encounters of the third kind, just like in the movie when somebody encounters an entity or a humanoid, alien, whatever you want to call it, all different types. Alan Hynek, the late Alan Hynek, he set up a system that categorized types of encounters, and one of them is the third kind, which is like I said, entity encounter, and there's subdivisions there within the close encounter of the third kind. First, we got Type A. Well, that's when there's a humanoid or entity seen on board a UFO or on a UFO. Let's say there's a window and there's somebody sitting there looking at you, waving at you. That's a Type A. Then you got Type B, when there's an encounter with a UFO on the ground or near the ground, and an entity is seen coming in and out of the object or entering the object. Type C, very common, there's a UFO near or on the ground, and there's entities seen near the object, but they're not seen entering the object. They're in the close proximity or in the vicinity. Then we have, excuse me, Type D, D like in Delta, when there's a UFO flap in the area and then somebody encounters a possible alien or humanoid in the area also, but no craft, and it's assumed that this humanoid is connected to the flap. Now, this type of is not used so much anymore, but he's there. Then we got Type E, one of the most common. That's when there's a lonely humanoid or humanoids encountered by the witness, be albeit in the woods, in your bedroom, anywhere, and there's no object seen. Let's say you're lying in bed and you hear a sound and you wake up. There's somebody, a humanoid, standing next to you. Could be a gray, could be any type of human.
Sounds pretty creepy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, or you're out in the woods walking your dog and then you encounter something too.
Right.
Then after that, we got Type F. It's more like a psychic encounter. When there's telepathic communication with an object, or you hear a voice coming from the object or telepathy, but there's no entity actually seen. Happens more than we think. F, and then we got very common encounter that after in the 80s it became very even more common. It's an abduction. Uh, when the person is actually taken on board a UFO for whatever reason, or sometimes he voluntarily goes on board, more like a contactee instead of a abductee, but he's also on board the UFO. Uh, After that, we got Type H, when there's supposedly a crash UFO recovery or entity recovery. Uh, we have those too, like the Roswell type incident.
Right.
H, and after that we have one of the type that I added, Type X, which is a very high strangeness type of case. It could be anything, but there's a lot of details that are really out there. Uh, that's very common too now, but I added it. It wasn't in there before. I added also Type I, which is injury or death to a witness. Not necessarily a humanoid was encountered, but there's some type of injury,
Right.
significant injury, not just sunburn or something like that, but just
Like the guy that got he was up against the grate when the thing took off and it burned it into his chest.
yeah, in Canada, that's right,
Yeah.
Manitoba, back in '67. I'm trying to think. Is there another one there? Yeah, there's another one I added when there's some type of not necessarily a humanoid, but some type of animal, unknown animal type creature encounter. like a giant bird, not a winged humanoid, like a
Right.
giant bird or unknown type creature seen in
Like
the
a cryptid.
some type of cryptid, not necessarily Bigfoot because I consider Bigfoot a humanoid type creature.
Right.
But yeah, that's about it there. All the
All right.
categories.
Well, let's go ahead and jump on into these cases. We have a lot of cases to go through. Again, I apologize for my voice being a little weird.
Yeah,
But we're going to start this one in King George, Virginia, 2020. The time is 16:10 a.m. 6:10 a.m. The witness Paige was waiting for the bus, and it was fairly dark as it was 6:10 a.m. Near a light, she saw something about 110 feet from where she was standing. It was tall, a good few feet taller than she. She was 5'5". It had long arms and was extremely pale with no other texture of colors on its body. Given the distance, she couldn't really get a good look at its face. It looked as if it were digging with its hands and moving about in a non-human way, almost jumping in an animalistic way. There are no animals around the area that it could have been. The biggest animal in that area is the coyote. No animal could move like that, and it was just huge. She swears it turned its head at her for a second and stopped digging. It then jumped into a tree, but not onto a branch. It was clinging onto the side of the tree, and it started repeatedly crushing itself against the tree, then moving its body away. After a brief time, it moved back out of the light and left the area. That's
kind of
pretty
weird.
weird.
Yeah, it sounds like some type of ape-like creature or something like that. Who knows? But it was pale in color. So, all right, let's move on. Then we
That was a type E.
yeah, type E encounter with a lone humanoid. I don't want to say extraterrestrial. God knows what it was. But yeah.
Right.
Next one, we go to Argentina, a place called Cerro de la Matanza, the province of Entre Rios.
Easy for you to say.
2020 in the evening. Exact date is not given. Argentine photographer Nestor Gaioli had climbed to the summit of the hill, and while he sat contemplating the view, he suddenly heard a noise behind him, and saw only a few meters from him a short, fluorescent humanoid figure, only about 70 centimeters in height. So it was a small, very small. He had long arms, and it was gliding over the ground on what appeared to be some type of platform or board. That's an interesting
like
detail.
a hoverboard.
Yeah, something like that.
Pretty cool alien.
Yeah, the entity floated by by him and disappeared into the distance. Now he photographer, but he was so stunned that he wasn't able to take a photo of what he saw. That's weird.
Yeah. Okay, so this next one,
You should be able to
the
pronounce that one.
location is Belloshanty, Argyll, and Butte, Scotland. And it's 2020 at nighttime. At the Argyll Hotel, a guest awoke to the sounds of quiet laughter and rummaging. As the guest sat up, they spotted a black-clad feature who vanished when the light was switched on. The guests searched the room, but there was no one there. After returning to bed, they watched several small balls of light flit about the room. Another visitor to the hotel during the late 1990s reported on a local forum that he had witnessed a dark figure walking around his room before vanishing.
So this could be like a shadow type being, a shadow person. Also
agree.
type E. Yeah. Okay, the next one, pretty cool name also. We go to Bolivia, a place called Ascensión de Guarayos in Bolivia. I wanted you to take that one. I'm kidding. The year 2020 at night, Carlos Aliaga Martinez was in a jungle area near the above locality, the locality I just mentioned, with several other persons when they saw in the distance bright lights in the sky that were descending towards the ground. Some of the lights landed, and from them, small luminous humanoid figures emerged and walked around the jungle, flickering on and off as they moved. Some of the figures seemed to be carrying bright flashlights in their hands. There's no additional information, but according to the source, uh, the witnesses left the area, did not see the creatures depart. So they're assuming. So this is a type B when they were seen coming out of the lights, assuming that was a UFO. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next one is located in northern British Columbia, Canada, January of 2020, time about dusk. The witness's boyfriend's parents were visiting and they have a dog. The witness and the mother were having a smoke on the deck, which is about 6 feet off the ground. It was dusk, not much light. They were on the left side of the deck, the same side that they turned on the road to go to town. They could see the patch of woods where the creature, seen before by the witness in 2018, would have been before. So this instance happened in the little same area.
Yeah.
The witness heard a bunch of crackling twigs just as the dog goes nuts. The dog is small, so they were surprised when it almost jumped off the deck to run into the woods. Her boyfriend came running out just in time to see, just beyond some trees, a tall, lanky, white form. But they could not see anything else definitive, and the boyfriend's mother has terrible eyesight and did not have glasses. The witness is convinced that it was the same creature seen in 2018. They did not leave the house that night.
So this creature is similar to the one spotted earlier in the first case that you covered. All right, here we go. We move on. The next case is that we go to England, Yorkshire, England. Hornsey, East Riding, Yorkshire, England. January 2020. Time is 10 minutes after 12 at night. A young man was fishing on the beach at Hornsey. The weather and sea conditions were very rough on the beach, so he moved close to the small seawall. He tucked himself down beside the wall and sheltered from the terrible conditions. He remembers checking his watch, and the time was 12:10. That's when he noticed a very small, thin figure walking along the shoreline. He sat a few moments watching it walk, amazed that someone would be so close to the shore in those conditions. It was very small, about 5 feet tall, and very thin. He said that if it was human, it had to be a woman. It was completely black from head to toe, and his arms moved in military fashion, but the left moved different. He watched it for a short time, then felt the urge to stand up. At that exact moment, the figure instantly stopped walking. He said he felt as though this thing was shocked that he had been seen, like it did not want to be seen. Then, over a period of about 6 seconds, the figure sort of pixelated and vanished. At that moment, he suddenly began feeling very scared and phoned his dad, told him what had happened, and asked him to come right away and get him. His dad arrived less than 5 minutes later. The time between making the phone call to being picked up and arriving back home should not have been more than 50 minutes. Yet, incredibly, when he arrived home, he says the time was 1:37 a.m. If this is correct, he was over 80 minutes. He had over 80 minutes of missing time. He has no recall of anything happening during the time. According to the source, for years, anglers or fishermen along that stretch of coastline claimed to have been spooked by the sounds of footsteps walking towards them and seeing a figure on the beach. Then looking again and no one is there. So, another type E encounter, and this is an entity. Sounds like either a dark shadowy. The interesting part is that it pixelated. That's weird.
Well, I was curious about the fact that it was about 5 feet tall and very thin. It sounds a bit like a gray to me,
Yeah, it does.
especially considering it's almost certainly an abduction. Okay, so this one
Yeah,
is
the
in
missing time.
Poland. The exact location is not given. The date is January 2nd and or 3rd of 2020, and it's nighttime. The witness, Sarah, involved in previous incidents, remembers riding down some weird round elevator. She remembers this circular elevator and going down into what appeared to be a hole made of black glass. There was a light flashing behind her. She was standing sideways. She felt kind of lethargic and had no control over what was happening around her. Sarah does not remember exactly how she ended up in the elevator. Apart from her, there were 3 other characters with her. They were tall and similar looking individuals. They wore silver, slightly shiny cloaked capes made of a foil-like material that hung loosely. They had hoods on their heads. At the front, in the place where the cloak had fastened, there was a gold color emblem resembling the letter Phi. The witness was standing in the middle of the elevator. One of the figures was standing in front of her, and the other 2 were behind her. The elevator was more than 2 meters high and quite wide as everyone stood around comfortably. There were no visible buttons on the elevator, but as soon as one of the individuals standing in front of the witness touched the elevator's glass wall with his forehead, the elevator began to descend. Sarah was also wearing the same type of cloak, which oddly enough, under which she was not wearing any clothes. She remembered going to bed wearing her pajamas. The witness does not remember any other details of the construction of the elevator or the clothing of the individuals. Then the witness remembers a round room that she entered directly from the elevator and is convinced that she was now on the deck of a flying saucer. Inside it was round. In front of her she could see a round table. The witness managed to establish that during the ride down, it was not visible which room or floor the elevator was entering into, but when the elevator suddenly stopped, Sarah and the 3 other individuals were immediately inside the round room. It was a very wide 4-meter high room with silver walls that looked like they were made of a metallic surface. The walls tapered at the top and the bottom, and the widest walls were halfway up the room. Sarah noticed the round table in the center of the room, while the left side of the object seemed darker and she couldn't tell what was there. At the edges of the walls, a strip ran around it halfway up the room, beneath which a bluish light emerged. The same strip with blue light was also on the table. Above the table in the ceiling, there were lots of lights that shone directly onto the table and did not illuminate any other part of the object. There was blue twilight all around. Then the witness was placed on the table by the 3 individuals. She felt no fear, neither in the elevator nor in the room. One of the men looked into her eyes and spoke telepathically, telling the witness that they had known her for a long time and that she should not be afraid, and nothing was going to happen to her. There was a bright light above the man which did not blind the witness. It is a focused light that only lit up when she was placed on the table. At this time, the witness noticed that the individuals had removed their cloaks, and she could see that they all had blonde hair and were Nordic in appearance. Their hair was kind of curly, but they all had the same length of hair. Their height was the same, and they were very tall. They looked beautiful, had beautiful smooth faces and no stubble, and all 3 were alike, just like triplets. Their eyes were blue, and they looked young, as if they were one age and never aged. She couldn't see their pants or shoes. One of the figures placed on Sarah's arms what appeared to be a metallic triangular set of splints, which had no fastenings on the surface, but as soon as they touched her arm, they joined themselves into one piece as if they were magnetic. She laid on the table, which had no head support, and her lower body was limp. The figures now placed what appeared to be barbells on her breasts, which crossed at the navel level and pressed tightly against the woman's body, and the barbells felt cold. Then one of the men performed what could only be described as a gynecological examination on Sarah. Another man examined her mouth and tongue. The examinations were carried out in a gentle manner, and Sarah felt no pain during the examination. She could not see what the third man was doing. Another thing the witness remembers is that when she woke up naked at home on her bed. She didn't remember getting off the table. She was naked on her bed, yet she had gone to bed wearing her pajamas. The pajamas were neatly stacked up on the back of the bed. It was 4 a.m., and that's all she could remember. When she woke up, she was in a fetal position. She would have considered the whole event a normal dream had it not been for the fact that, in the morning, her nipples were swollen and her tongue ached. Sarah felt so sore that she decided to see her doctor. The doctor told her that it could just be a touch of the flu, but she didn't tell anybody, as she thought no one would believe her. Another symptom that she noticed was that her intimate parts were very swollen. This condition lasted for 2 weeks. She noticed an oily liquid flowing from her. It was slightly greasy, unlike classical vaginal discharge. It ran down to her knees, and she had to wear a sanitary napkin. The liquid exuded an odor resembling chamomile, only stronger. It was not possible to establish how long her journey in the elevator took, as well as the whole event, because the witness had no sense of time at all. She only remembers going to bed after 7 p.m. and waking up in the morning. The whole time her husband was fast asleep. Apparently, he never noticed her missing or heard any sounds, as if he had been placed in some kind of suspended animation. In abduction research, we call that being turned off.
Turned off, yeah.
While inside the craft, the men did not seem to communicate with each other. She did not feel a sense of motion and didn't sense any odors inside the object. She didn't see the outside of the object.
Interesting abduction report from Poland.
Yeah.
Arek Miaska, he's a Polish researcher that I'm in contact with. That's
very high strangeness.
Yeah. All right, then we move on back to England. A place called Oldham in Manchester, England, January 6, 2020, in the afternoon. While working in the back gardens, the witness suddenly had an overwhelming feeling that he was being watched from above and in front of him. He looked up but couldn't see anything. Then all of a sudden his eyes focused on an object moving about 75 feet in front of him. He was moving very slowly. The witness felt like he couldn't blink in case he wouldn't be able to see it again. During this time of not blinking, he observed an egg-shaped object in an upright position with some person sitting at the front wearing some sort of suit. He or it seemed to be looking at the witness, but was unmoving. The object was almost transparent and blended in perfectly with the clouds. The witness knew that once he blinked, he wouldn't see it again. And when he blinked, the object was gone. He looked around but couldn't find it anymore. It was about the size of a helicopter cabin and apparently glass covered at the front. Interesting case, type A, entity seen inside the object. Unfortunately, he does not describe the entity, but he was there looking at him inside from the craft.
Right. Okay, so for this one, we go to Ponce, Puerto Rico. The date is January 7th, 2020. Time between 4:15 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. Just hours before the 6.4 magnitude struck the region, Mr. Ricardo Suarez Alcala from Milwaukee was sleeping in the house of some family members when, in a dreamlike state, he saw several tall, beautiful blonde-haired beings with light skin. The beings told Ricardo not to worry and not to be afraid, that everything was going to be all right, and they would never leave us alone. After walking about 5 minutes later, the earthquake occurred, exactly what the beings had told him. The witness had experienced a previous encounter in Milwaukee when he was completely awake. So this is an F or an E type encounter.
Right, because maybe he was put in some kind of state that he was able to see the entity. This is interesting because it was the day of the earthquake in the region there, Puerto Rico, eastern Cuba, that was felt in Haiti. Uh, I remember Jorge Martin, the source, calling me that day and telling me about the earthquake, and we talked about that.
Wow.
Yeah, weird. And we stay in Puerto Rico for the next one. You're at Arecibo, Puerto Rico, where the Arecibo
Telescope was?
it used to be that it fell apart. It was just abandoned, unfortunately.
Yeah,
January
that's too bad.
15th, yeah, January 15th, 2020. The time was 4 a.m. Local resident, Mr. Jose Antonio Morrocio, living at the Playa condominium on Los Pinos Street, heard his dog barking at around 4 a.m. The neighborhood dogs were also barking. Concerned, he got up to see what was going on. When he opened the door of his residence, he immediately saw a figure hiding behind some nearby bushes. The figure was about 6 feet in height, greenish in color, and had long dangling arms. His dog ran towards where the figure was hiding. At that same moment, the figure suddenly moved slowly and then ran quickly from the area, the whole time looking at Moroncio as he did, looking at the witness. The creature's eyes were black, shaped different from that of humans. His dog ran back to him and appeared very frightened. The witness went back inside his home with his dog and locked the door and waited until morning to go outside. This is again from Jorge Miranda in Puerto Rico. It's been a lot of incidents lately in Puerto Rico, but it's always
Yeah, it
been a lot
sounds
of,
like it.
yeah.
Did you just read number 11 or number 12?
Number 10. So you
Number
go to
10.
11.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
This is
so
also in
this is
Puerto
also
Rico.
in Puerto Rico, in Barrio Guragango.
Yeah, close.
Guragawa.
Yeah, I can't hear.
Guadago.
Yeah, there you go. Ponce.
And in Ponce. And the date is January 16th of 2020 at nighttime. The witness, Kelly Miller Martinez, her children and sister had gone to visit Mrs. Martinez's ranch. Upon arriving, Martinez exited the vehicle and went to open the gate to access the property. As she opened the gate, she noticed something like a large black bird flying across from her at a certain undetermined distance. She described the flight of the creature as heavy and noticed that it was large, then alerted her sister to the presence of the strange bird. They walked on until they arrived at the ranch house. Then she told her older son, Tito, to empty the garbage, and he went to get a small cart located by the gate and went back to the house when he suddenly screamed, "Mom, the bird is here, is big and ugly." What, until that moment, they thought it had only been a large bird, was now standing in the middle of a nearby hill. When Mrs. Martinez looked, she thought what she saw was described as a creature 3 to 4 meters tall, dark in color, and in some ways resembling a huge bat, covering its whole body with its large wings. She couldn't see its legs, only the head, which seemed to be moving around. Mrs. Martinez was frightened, since there were neighbors in the area and she had no idea what she was facing. They all went back inside in the house, and after a while, her 16-year-old daughter shone a flashlight on the nearby path, and suddenly the strange flying humanoid flew down from the hill and landed on the roof of the house, perching itself on the top of the eaves. At this point, the family became hysterical, screaming and closing the windows, and could now hear the creature walking on the roof, making scratching noises as if it had large clawed feet. In a panic, they called the local police on their cell phone. At this point, the creature flew on top of a nearby trailer on their property. Soon, about 5 to 6 police vehicles arrived. The officers realized how frightened the family was and told them that they believed them, since sometime before, another woman had reported seeing something similar. Mrs. Martinez additionally described the creature as huge, black in color, with huge wings and no tail. She also added that the creature's eyes were glowing red in color, but the facial features could not be distinguished due to the darkness, and at times the creature would cover its entire body with its huge wings. However, despite that police support, the officers refused to write a report on the incident. Boy, that sure sounds like a Mothman encounter to me.
Yeah, so there was a lot of winged humanoid type encounters recently in Puerto Rico, especially in 2020 during the right before the pandemic struck. And we remain in Puerto Rico in the next one. Wow.
That's interesting. It's
Yeah, I
almost
know.
like a portent.
Yeah, yeah. Remember that happened in Point Pleasant with a Mothman. Excuse me. Got a sore throat also. The next case we go to also in Puerto Rico called Lomas Verdes in the area of Bayamón, Puerto Rico, January 23rd, 2020 at 5 a.m. Early on the morning of the above date, a very strange incident was reported near the regional hospital. According to the witness, Yadira Guzman, at around 5 a.m., she heard something very heavy land and began walking on the roof of her residence. According to Guzman, whatever it was extremely heavy, and she could hear the loud, heavy footsteps. She looked out the kitchen door, which is made out of glass, but didn't see anything. But felt something trying to pull a curtain. She hung over the door and also heard a loud growling sound. Something then landed on the row of plants in front of their house, damaging several of them. She could now see what it was. What she saw was a very tall, at least 7 feet tall, human-shaped figure, very corpulent in appearance. It was dark in color and had large wings, which she couldn't see very well. So this is almost like the creature seen previously. When she saw the creature fall or land on her yard, it seemed to slowly descend as it's floating. She also could hear what sounded like flapping of wings over her house, perhaps indicating a second creature. According to her neighbor, Mr. Miguel Pagan, right before Ms. Guzman's sighting, he had heard a commotion on top of the reinforced roof of his residence. And it sounded to him like two persons or creatures fighting on the roof. After a few minutes, one of the creatures seemed to have left or flown from the roof. According to Mr. Pagan, he was too afraid to go outside to look. Mrs. Guzman also had become frightened and did not stay around the door to see the creature depart.
I don't blame either of them a bit.
Weird. Okay.
That's a type E case.
Yeah, another flying humanoid type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there had been such a flap, pardon the
In
pun.
yeah, there was.
Okay, so this location is Stafford Road, Cannock Chase, Staffordshire, England, in February 14th of 2020, about 2 a.m. It was a cold and snowy day in early spring, which the witness remembers quite clearly as he had a lot to do this day and wasn't happy that it was snowing, as this would slow him down. A few hours into his day, he was driving down Stafford Road through the forest of Cannock Chase. The snow was blinding on the road, so he was taking it very cautiously and noticed the snow had just begun to melt, causing the roads to become more slippery. He was busy concentrating on the road when his eyes were drawn to a figure moving in the woods. He first presumed it was just a child making the most of the weather and playing in the snow. However, when he looked again, he could see the figure more clearly, and it appeared to be a small childlike figure wearing an old-fashioned black dress. He thinks that the reason he noticed her in the first place was as the black dress stood out in sharp contrast to the snow. The roads were dangerous that day, so he could only glance into the woods for a few seconds at a time. He could easily have slid the car and lost control if he weren't careful. As he got closer, he could see the girl wasn't playing in the snow. She appeared to be alone and was standing very still with her eyes locked onto his car. His gut reaction was then to think perhaps she was just lost or in distress, and he immediately slowed down and signaled to pull over. He stopped just ahead of where the girl was so that he could see her, but in his mirrors as he parked up. He quickly turned his engine off and got out of the car, but when he turned around to see the girl, she was gone. Thinking perhaps she had run away, He walked up and down the road for a few minutes to see if he could spot her in the woods. He considered that she may have been hidden away somewhere, so he shouted, "Hey, are you okay? Are you lost? It's not safe for anyone to be in the woods on their own." But no one replied. Feeling a bit confused and deflated, he got back into his car. He started to question himself and wondered if he had seen anyone there at all. He tried to convince himself that it was a trick of the light after being blinded by the snow, and it was probably just a hedge or a shadow. He started his engine and slowly pulled the car away. He kept a close eye on the woods as he drove along slowly, hoping to see a similar trick of light or figure-shaped hedge or the girl again to reassure him that he was not going crazy. He was tentatively trying to watch the road and scan the woods at the same time, but he was slowly traveling down the road. His concentration was suddenly broken by the sound of a quiet and childlike giggle coming from his back seat. "I knew it! I knew it!" The noise terrified him, and he jumped so violently he swerved the car and struggled to keep it on the road. His eyes flew to the interior mirror, and he saw the same little girl in the black dress from the woods earlier sitting in the back of his car. Her face was white as a ghost, and eyes were black as coal. It was her eyes that scared him the most, as they didn't seem natural. He couldn't see any white in her eyes, yet he knew she was staring right at him, almost feeling like she was staring through him. Thankfully, it only took him a few seconds to regain control of the car and slam the brakes. All the while, he could see the black-eyed girl in the interior mirror. As soon as he had stopped the car, he unbuckled his seatbelt and turned around to face the girl in the back seat. However, when he turned, she was gone. The doors were still closed, so she did not exit the car, and he leaned over to see if she were behind his seat, but there was no one there. He got out of the car and opened the back seat doors to check again. She was definitely not in the vehicle. He walked around the whole car, checking it frantically. He also scanned the woods around him in case she had somehow gotten out without him seeing, but she wasn't there either. He really thought he was going mad at this point. After a few minutes, he managed to calm himself down enough to get back in the car and drive home. He was almost too scared to do that, but the thought of staying in the woods was even scarier. He told a few of his family and friends about it afterward, but none of them believed him.
I mean, that's creepy. That was creepy. This is from Lee Brickley. He's a researcher there in the UK, mostly in the Cannock Chase area. Black-eyed kid. That's what it sounds like. That's what it looked like.
Always creepy.
All right, here we go. The next case, we go to a place called Ocean Shore in Washington, state of Washington. February 19, 2020. The time was 2 a.m. A U.S. Army Reserve lieutenant reported that he was abducted by extraterrestrial beings and reportedly managed to photograph the UFO after being released. The case allegedly took place at 2 a.m. on Ocean Shore in Washington state. According to her account, her car stopped after a light came up and then she saw a flash. Seconds later, she found herself under the close watch of several gray-colored beings with big black eyes, the grays. Her next memory was being back in the car and seeing a pink UFO shaped like a donut flying away. She took a picture of it with her cell phone. According to the source, the case is still under investigation. There's no photo in the source, but it was a MUFON source. So, typical abduction, gray humanoids. Yeah.
Could you do me a favor and take this one for me?
Sure, the next one, sure. Okay, we go to west of St. Luis, Rio, Colorado, in Baja California, Mexico. Spring 2020, evening. A local man was driving on a rural road to the east of Mexicali, just west of the town of San Luis, Rio Colorado. Reportedly clipped a strange creature with his truck and wondered what had just happened. He stopped his vehicle and the creature landed in front of him, standing upright with its wings bent as if it were a human with his hands on his hip. After staring at the driver of the truck for a few moments, the gigantic bird-like being or creature unfurled its wings, beat them to the ground a few times, and lifted itself off the ground a few feet, hovering for a few more seconds before taking off. Excuse me. The poor rural truck driver told his family and friends about what had happened, but they didn't take him seriously. They never do, claiming that he drove his vehicle into a gigantic duck. If that makes any sense.
No. I love it. I love it.
So that's another winged humanoid, this time from Mexico. Yeah.
A gigantic duck.
Really?
That's so silly. But another Birdman creature.
Yeah.
Those are pretty popular tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next one takes place in Fields, Louisiana, March of 2020, time 1730 hours. Bored from being stuck at home with his wife during the pandemic, the witness, no name provided, had left to do some camping and fishing at a creek the locals referred to as Turtle Creek. It got this name due to the abundance of snapping turtles that called it home. At around 5:30 p.m., the witness decided to make his supper. He had a small fire, cooking bacon and a burger. Bacon burger. Suddenly, a black helicopter flew overhead and then circled back. Since there was a lockdown order in place, the witness actually thought it might be the police checking out the woods for people. Within 5 minutes, he realized that it wasn't that, as a strange, hairy, bipedal creature came running through the forest in his direction. Quote, "The only way to describe the thing I saw is to say that it looked like a werewolf," unquote, he noted. The creature ran, stopped, then proceeded to hop onto and then climb up an old oak tree. The witness was in total disbelief. Quote, "I could see something moving at the top of the tree, and then the helicopter comes speeding back, flying low right above the trees. The helicopter does a flyby, and the witness swears that the creature jumped down from the tree. It was 8 feet tall. The distance away from the witness was about 35 to 40 yards. The creature seemed afraid because, looking left and looking right, the witness would never forget those gigantic yellow eyes with those black pupils, and its fur was black, blacker than black. He couldn't hear the helicopter, but the creature apparently could, as it gave the witness a look like, 'What should I do?' It looked at the witness with a confused look on his face. After about 15 more seconds, it took off running. A few minutes later, the helicopter returned, headed in the same direction and that the creature ran off in. The black helicopter was flying just above the trees, and it was clear that they were chasing after the werewolf-like creature. The witness felt uneasy about what he'd just observed and immediately left the area."
No, that's strange. This is from the dark waters, and it's God knows, maybe there was somebody actually chasing this creature. Right, poor thing.
Yeah, weird confluence of,
Cases
huge owls or bats or Mothmen
or ducks.
or gigantic ducks. Yes.
Okay, the next one we go to
A gigantic duck.
near Lebanon, Ohio, March 5th, 2020. Right at the height of the pandemic. Started around that time. It was 22:30 at night. A man was driving south on Route 48 towards Mainville at approximately 10:30 p.m. He noticed a commotion at the small bridge over Turtle Creek. Oh, here we hear Turtle Creek again, but at a different location. That's weird. 3 other cars were stopped, and several people were out on foot carrying flashlights. All of a sudden, from the left side of the road jumps up a 7-foot-tall, pinkish-brown, hairless creature with green reflected eyes, no mouth or ears. It crouched on the middle of the road, appearing very frightened, then suddenly grabbed the metal rail and threw itself into the thicket below. At least 7 witnesses had seen the creature. Additional description of the creature indicated they had normal hands, but the feet and legs were like hawks. like a Hawks. Project Paranormal. Weird. They're all over
That
the
is
place
a
back
weird
in
one.
2020. Yeah.
I guess while we were all inside under lockdown, the humanoids just came out to play, huh?
That they said that the animals also did. There were animals everywhere since there were no humans around. Yeah. Wildlife
Yeah.
besides these weird other creatures. All right.
Okay, so the next one takes place in Colinas del Este, Juancos, Puerto Rico. The date is March 7th, 2020, and the time is 2100. The witness, a Mrs. Maria Hernandez, involved in a previous encounter, suddenly felt the urge to look outside her window and saw a large, tall, thin-headed creature. A tall, thin, large-headed creature that appeared to be concealing itself behind some trees in her yard. When she went outside to get a closer look, the strange creature had vanished.
This is again from Jorge in Puerto Rico. It's a short. A lot of these are short summaries, but that's all the information that given.
It gets the information across for sure.
Go the next one. We go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, April 3rd, 2020, time at night. The witness Ricardo Suarez Alcala again was contacted in a dreamlike state with tall human-like entity with long blonde hair. This is the same guy in Puerto Rico earlier, but he lives in the U.S. in Milwaukee. They spoke to him repeating the word geomorpho, whatever that means, or something similar on several occasions. He usually slept with a mask covering his eyes ever since his physical December encounter with a strange similar appearing being in his bedroom. Later, after he woke up, the witness searched for the meaning of the strange word. The closest he could come up with was geometry, or the shape, or the shape of the earth. In the dream, he was shown from a location high above the earth, the planet Earth going through its different ages and epochs, just like a movie. They told him that the earth was changing, that it was evolving. He felt as he was seeing everything from outside or from another plane, like from another dimension, maybe. He felt that the beings were trying to tell him that what was happening was all part of the process. After this third experience, Ricardo now sleeps with pen and paper next to his bed in order to write anything down that he might remember or told. This is again from Jorge Martin.
That's a pretty smart idea, actually.
Well, something was happening back 2020, that's for sure.
Yeah, the first thing I thought when you said geomorpho was geomorphism, but I think that you're probably correct. It's probably closer to geometry. Okay, so this next one is in Barrio Nuevo, Coita, Chiapas, Mexico. The date is April 10th of 2020, and this occurs at nighttime. That night, a patrolman known only as Alfonso sent a text to a member of his family. He and 3 other police officers responded to a call in Barrio Nuevo, a part of town. For days, local here and in other neighborhoods, he had reported strange howling noises and sightings of a strange creature, but this was the first time that the police department got involved. According to Officer Alfonso's testimony, he and his 3 colleagues also saw what they described as a man with wolf-like features standing 2 meters tall. The officer saw the creature jump a 2-meter-high fence in a single leap, and also reported it seeing it walk on rooftops. Apparently, this small town had been terrorized for well over a week, and many townsfolk had just seen 2 or 3 creatures together. Some believed that the strange wolf-man beings came out of hiding from a near forest surrounding Mayapac Mountain, an area designated as a protected ecological zone in 2016.
So here again, we got werewolf-like creatures. I tell you,
Yeah,
everything was out. Everything was out. Yes, sir.
weird.
Okay, the next one, we go to British Columbia, Canada. There's no exact location given. April 29, 2020. around midnight, a creature that appeared to be made of light flew around a tree several times, then hovered over the house. The creature had a head and face and wings that moved in a moth-like flutter. So it was another winged type humanoid. It seemed to be composed of light. It had shape, yet no flesh or bones. It stopped flying around the tree and hovered for several minutes. The witness and the creature silently stared at each other for several minutes. After a couple minutes, it flew a few feet away to the top of an exterior staircase and hovered again. He flew around the apple tree several times, very quickly, while flapping his wings madly. According to the witness, quote, I think he may have been fueling up from the leaves emissions. I don't know what I guess the energy coming out of the leaves. That's what the witness said. This is from MUFON.
UFOs got oh, now I'm forgetting the word. Chlorophyll?
Yeah, chlorophyll maybe.
Yeah.
The creature was so he was some kind of winged creature, but made
Talk
out of
about a
light.
renewable resource, right?
There you go.
Okay, so this next one is in Avoca, St. Clair County, Michigan. The date is May of 2020, time 1500 hours. A man and his girlfriend hiking the Avoca Trail in St. Clair County around 3 p.m. observed a tall broken tree right in the middle of the clearing. They sensed that it was looking at them. They had never noticed a tree there before. They carried on. On the way back, they saw it again. The witness wanted to get closer, but something in the pit of their stomach told them that this was a bad idea. They left the area. A few days later, they returned to the clearing and found that there was no tree, not even a stump. The ground was matted down. They guessed that the tree, was around 8 feet tall, whatever it was. Mysterious tree creature.
Mysterious tree creature. We got all sorts out there. Okay, the next one is weird. We go to Italy here. A place called Avignanello in Campania, province of Campania, Italy. May 3rd, 2020 evening. The witness, a Mr. Vincenzo Tufano, was out collecting firewood in a wooded area when he heard a low, unfamiliar noise, a kind of roar, coming from a grove to his right. He carried a very powerful flashlight with him, as it was very dark in the area, and had barely entered the grove when he saw a huge mass in front of him. His curiosity pushed him to get closer, and when he got to within a few meters, he realized it was legs, slightly raised in the center, and these were two giant legs. He pointed his flashlight and saw two immense, scaly logs, apparently the limbs of an unidentified bipedal creature. The thickness of the log was about 6 to 7 times the trunk of an oak tree, so it was huge. He noticed that on its surface there were no visible mechanical parts, and there was a skin similar to that of a reptile, interspersed with large, pointy spikes, about 2 meters long, of an intense green color, all along the femoral area. Those spikes seemed to vibrate like the strings of a violin. Incredibly, he managed to grab his cell phone, zoom in, and take 4 photos of the surface of the strange creature's skin. He was able to photographically document a scaly section of the mysterious animal that resembled a cross between a crocodile, a turtle, and a prehistoric lizard. Since he had assorted colors and characteristics, the fear, however, made him desist from continuing to take pictures when he glimpsed a giant head swinging from left to right, just like how a Komodo dragons do when they slither on the ground. The head also had giant spikes of green membrane which seemed to vibrate at intervals, and his eyes were red but with yellowish contours. The face was mixed of crocodile, horse, and calf, calf, C-A-L-F. Tufano turned and ran away, but as he did, He tripped and fell to the ground, injuring his right hand. He grabbed his flashlight and got up and walked to the nearby road, got back into his car and drove away. As he did, he heard a strange roar or growl again. The following day, the local carabinieri and forestry officials investigated the area and found dozens of giant footprints, which belonged to some colossal beast, according to them. The footprints couldn't be classified after an in-depth study. Some were big, some were so big that they could fit a man inside. So we're talking about a dinosaur. There have been reports of strange screams and bizarre sightings in the area before. According to the source, there's a nuclear plant just a few miles from Avignanello, and in 1980 there was a reported radiation leak which sparked hundreds of mutations of numerous farm animals. The nuclear plant is now inactive. The source hypothesizes that what was seen could have been some sort of mutation. Apparently, all the photographs and audio material has been reviewed in great depth by experienced technical and analysts such as Carmine Silvestri, who confirmed the authenticity of the photos. I haven't seen the photos, but I think in the book by the Italian author is there. Also, there have been numerous strange attacks on wild boars, foxes, dogs, and sheep in the area, where the huge three-claw footprints were found. On some occasions, the remains of dead animals were studied by local veterinarian vets, which have also collected hair and large scales in the area. The scales were similar to that of a chameleon, but with bio-artificial features. So what are we talking about? An unidentified woman also reporting that between the villages of Rubiano and San Domenico, she has seen a large silhouette similar to that of a horse. At the scene, footprints were found as well as a mutilated goat and an injured boar. Okay, great. This is from an Italian cryptozoologist, Erika De Cunzo. She wrote a book. Jorge also, she sent a report to Jorge Martin, but she wrote a book, and I think I might have it in Kindle, but in Italian. I have to check, see if there's any photos of the creature, but there's a drawing there in the image, but you're unable to bring up the images.
Yeah, it just looks like a wolf man.
No, the one above the case 23.
Yeah, like the reptoid.
Yeah, reptoid type.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is for you. Okay. That's another Wolfman type weird.
Yeah. So this is in central Pennsylvania, exact location not provided. The date, May 5th, 2020. Time, late night. Bored from being at home because of the pandemic, the witness decided to go on a vacation. He managed to book a spot at a campsite in central Pennsylvania for May 1st, a week-long booking. It was an RV park, but he managed to secure a spot in a less frequented area of the campsite back near the tree line. His kids were not interested in joining him, so he decided to bring his 120-pound pit bull lab mix, Pete. His SUV was equipped with an internet hotspot router, so it worked almost anywhere. This allowed him to work from the road, but also enjoyed some fishing and vacation time. He loaded up his small tent, his grill, and a few more items, including his shotgun. He arrived on Friday, May 1st, and spent most of the day getting his campsite set up and getting to know his temporary neighbors. He turned his trailer into a sort of mobile office. That weekend, the part was extremely busy, but they quickly cleared out after campers were alerted to a black bear which had made its way into a more accessible area of the campground and raided some of the camps. By that Tuesday, May 5th, there were only a few campers left. The witness enjoyed a barbecue with his new neighbors. At around 10 p.m., they turned in for the night. The witness laid in his tent, listening to the news with his earphones late into the night. Within hours of falling asleep, all hell broke loose. He was awakened to the sound of loud metal. Something had slammed his grill shut. He noticed that his dog was listening, but uncharacteristically, it remained still and quiet. It was then that he noticed that the normal sound of frogs and crickets was completely gone, replaced by an eerie silence, otherwise known as the Oz effect. He had a motion light near his camp, and it came on, and he could see that something was walking around on two legs in his campsite. The creature approached his tent and growled. He immediately assumed that it was the bear. As it drew closer, it was on 2 feet and apparently huge. He sat there in terror and disbelief as it came right up to the front of his tent, breathing like a giant monster. The witness said out loud, "Whoever you are, I have a 12 gauge pointed right at you, so you better sound off who you are." Right then, it leaned forward right up to the tent and let out the most terrifying deep growl the witness had ever heard in his life. At that moment, Pete whined softly and cowered his head down. It was then that the shadow of its head was clearly visible. It had a giant head of a wolf with 2 pointed ears. As it growled at the witness, he could hear his neighbors talking to one another, and one of them shone a flashlight at the creature. When the light hit the side of the creature's face, he saw the eye light up like golden LED lights. It turned its face toward the flashlight, and he could hear a man say, "Holy!" Then it turned its attention back to the witness and growled again. He decided that if he didn't do something, the creature was going to kill them, so he laid back onto his sleeping pad, took aim at the shadow of the monster's head, and pulled the trigger. Upon shooting the creature, it backed up and ran off. It gave off a death scream, which sounded like a woman mixed with the roar of a large lion. It slammed into the trailer and then fell over a picnic table. The witness climbed out of his tent and saw the thing holding its face and thrashing. Blood was everywhere. It tried to stand up. The witness shot it a second time. He was not exactly sure he hit it with the second shot. It stood straight up, and then the witness pumped the gun and shot again. The third shot dropped it again. The witness was terrified and taken aback at how tall it was when it stood up, that he tripped over his own feet and fell backward. Just then, he heard more gunfire behind him and turned to see his neighbor unloading a large revolver into the werewolf-looking thing at maybe 20 yards. The creature was on its side and was kind of running in circles on the ground, gargling and spraying blood from its face and neck as it gasped, doing its death spiral on the ground. The creature moved closer to the witness, and he, terrified, loaded and fired at it again, this time hitting it in the back of the neck. The witness stood up, shaking badly, and looked at the guy with the revolver. His eyes were huge and full of terror. When he started looking around, there were at least 5 other people showing up there with the same wild-eyed expression. He saw at least 3 of them had come with guns, and because people were yelling and asking each other what was happening and checking to see if he was injured because he had the hoodie over his face. The creature seemed to thrash about for several minutes before finally succumbing to its injuries. Pete, the dog, went suddenly crazy, barking ferociously as if it had snapped out of a trance. A small crowd had formed, and people were on their phones calling 911 after a minute or two. The witness and a few other guys approached the creature as it lay there, still, occasionally twitching. Eventually, they all started saying that it was a werewolf. In disbelief, all at once, people started taking pictures with their phones, and he was still in the tent. The top of the creature's head was basically gone, including both of its eyes at the top of the snout. The front of its neck was completely shredded, and the back of its neck was missing a large chunk of meat. Using sticks, they managed to turn the creature over. It was male. It had dog-like legs with weird-shaped paws, with small kinds of heels for feet. It had really skinny lower legs and a pretty thick upper body. It had arms pretty much like a human with long fingers that had filthy-looking claws maybe 3 to 4 inches long. Then the second wave of terror hit everybody at once. The howling of multiple animals sounded off in the direction of the mountain behind the creek. They all looked at each other, terrified. Everyone was done looking at the werewolf and was looking into the woods in the direction of the howling. It kept up for a few minutes, and they could hear the howling getting further and further away. The police, game wardens, and paramedics showed up all at once. He could hear from the flashing lights that they had blocked the entrance to the campground up the hill to the distance. The cops were just as surprised and felt freaked out as the rest of the campers when they first saw the creature. The two game wardens looked around but were not surprised. They told everyone not to take any pictures and made everyone clear the general area. The wardens were both on their phones almost the whole time from then on. The paramedics attempted to get the main witness to the hospital and checked out, but he refused. The paramedics were also very silent and looking worried, much like the game wardens. The police took his shotgun and revolver from his neighbor and made everyone put their guns away. They rounded everyone there up for questioning and told everyone to stay off of their phones. A few hours later, an SUV full of guys showed up. They were all carrying large Glocks and dressed in cargo pants and t-shirts. They immediately took the witness and the others who were involved aside and began questioning them. They told the witness that they were federal fish and game and were very interested in the howling, and the witness had heard after the battle. They basically told the witness not to tell anyone what happened, and if asked, to say that he had to shoot an aggressive black bear. They warned everyone that if any of the pictures were to come out of this creature, it would spell trouble for anyone who was there. After the dogman was bagged and tagged, a small fire truck was brought in and all the blood was hosed off of the witness's trailer, vehicle, and tables. They basically wiped all the evidence of the dead creature and told the witnesses to fill his tank at the closest town and drive straight home without stopping. The witness added that the creature smelled horrible and it did have a tail maybe 2 feet at the longest. It was dark brown all over. Oddly enough, he remembers that it had some lighter brown stripes on its arms where the blood wasn't totally soaked in. All of its teeth were very pointy and they seemed like they would fit together like a shark's tooth or alligator. From the beginning of this incident, the witness stated that there was a feeling of something supernatural. After sharing the information 2 years later, the witness claims that he had been followed by a black SUV with a guy wearing a headphone and a microphone. That's a crazy encounter, Albert.
Yeah, if we're to believe what happened, there's stuff out there in the woods that, who knows, maybe that's why people disappear sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, we go to the next one. We go to Brazil, a place called Serra dos Orgãos near Magué in Rio de Janeiro province, Brazil. May 12, 2020, time is unknown. Supposedly a lens-shaped biconvex disc was shot down by a U.S. high-energy plasma weapon from an alien underground base as part of a special ambush operation. This is kind of wild too out there. The down object crashed into a mountainside at an angle of approximately 30 to 40 degrees, knocking down trees. When the object was located from air surveillance helicopters, a hatch was found open to the outside. On the side of the object were 3 vertical red stripes, or red rib-like protrusions. 3 tall humanoid entities, 7 feet tall, with white skin and blonde hair, were found inside. 1 dead and 2 living, but soon they died. They also died soon. The object and the bodies were eventually transported to an unknown location in the U.S. This I got from Ukrainian researcher Anton Anfalov. He specializes in UFO crash retrievals. So I put it in there for the record. So who knows?
Yeah, it's just getting curiouser and curiouser, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one took place near Donegal, Pennsylvania, date May 27th of 2020 in the evening. The witness was outside getting some fresh air and watching some deer in a field across the road. It was dark, but there was some illumination around the field. The deer were suddenly frightened by something, and they ran from the area. It was moments later that the witness saw a tall, dark humanoid figure that appeared to be over 6 feet tall. The figure itself was very dark, and the arms bent and did not swing as it moved. The movement of the figure was unusual, and it did not seem to be running, but rather gliding across the field. It moved extremely fast, crossing about 75 yards in 10 seconds. Whatever it was that moved out of sight was not seen again. The witness did not know what was seen, but was sure that it was not human. That one's from Stan Gordon.
Yeah, so this is some kind of creature. Could have been Bigfoot, could have been something else. Who knows? Could have
Crazy.
been a werewolf. Okay. Let's go to the next one. We go to Spain, near Carmona, Sevilla, Spain. There's an image there. The summer 2020, time afternoon, Carlos Magariños, along with 2 other people, were driving on the Sevilla-Madrid highway near Carmona when they saw a car in the median that was on fire. They stopped on the shoulder to help them along with 3 other cars behind them. However, due to the heavy rain, a car further back skidded when braking, causing a chain reaction, resulting in Magariños' cars getting hit also. They got out of their car and realized there also had been a chain reaction crash on the opposite lane of the highway, and in the midst of the chaos, a, quote, priest suddenly appeared and approaches their vehicle. They didn't know where he had come from, since there was no other vehicle in front of them, and they were in the middle of nowhere. The priest came towards them dressed in a clergyman's suit. He was tall, in his 40s, with gray hair. When they explained to him what they had spotted, that they had stopped to help the accident victim, and that they had been hit by another car, he stared at them and asked them if they were in any pain as a result of the blow. The priest then put his left hand on the neck of a girl who was in the car, and that told him that her neck hurt. The girl noticed that his hand was extremely cold, and told them that if they have stopped to help, nothing bad could have happened to them. He told them that. When he asked if there was anyone else who was injured, they pointed to the car in the median, and he headed toward. Carlos later noted that when the priest approached them, they were soaked, but the priest was completely dry. He had very neatly combed back hair. Dry toupee on his face. Okay. And his face had a plastic texture to it. The witness also couldn't see his feet. When he walked over to the medium, he suddenly disappeared in plain sight, leaving Magariños and the others shocked. So maybe this is some kind of a positive entity for a change. Came to help somebody.
It's definitely familiar.
Guardian angel type. Yeah.
Okay, so this one is in the Sierra Mountains in California, from which the Sierra Sounds originate. And the date is June of 2020. The time is 3 a.m. Michael Granger and his team of Bigfoot investigators entered into an area in the Sierras in which they had substantial Bigfoot activity in the past. Actions in the form of wood knocks, howls, branch snapping, and the like, but no formal sightings of the physical creature. They had a 4-person team that night equipped with night vision, infrared, and sound detection equipment. They were loaded for bear that night, or should we say Bigfoot. 2 of the men in their team were about 50 yards away from Michael and the team member Sammy Hartley at about 3 a.m. When they were startled by a crunch breaking the silence in which they were standing, Sammy and Michael turned immediately upon hearing the sound coming from their left-hand side, just in time to catch what was a Bigfoot that appeared to be standing up from having been sitting on a downed tree. That's the way it seemed to them anyway. Michael immediately had the infrared on it, with its signature and size being massive in the scope, and just as the beast bolted, running into the trees at a ridiculous rate of speed. Then it was gone. Immediately they were on the radio reporting it to other members to the other members what had happened, summoning them to come to their location right away. It only took them a few minutes, and they were now standing by their sides, the four of them surveying the darkened forest, looking and listening with their equipment, seeing and hearing nothing. Then the entire woods in front of them, stretching 200 feet wide, became illuminated with blue light. The light was filtering through the trees, appearing as though a line of 20 cars with blue headlights on high beams was ahead of them. No noise, just light. It made Michael's hair stand up, just reliving it. The men freaked out, but it didn't end there. They were all looking left and right at each other with nobody saying a word when out of this bank of blue light started to appear figures, several of them, all of which began to move forward in the woods slowly. The figures moved in unison, all of them stopping at the same point in the trees, their silhouettes outlined with the blue light. Each of them appeared to be a Bigfoot, varying slightly in height and width. The conical heads, long arms, and arched shoulders were visible to all of the men. They were frozen, with none of them speaking. Michael felt as if he had been held in place at the time, not afraid, just mesmerized in some strange way. It was like a standoff, with neither the witness or the creatures moving whatsoever. Suddenly, several orbs of white light began to appear, coming out of the blue lights, beginning to move into the trees, both near and away from the Bigfoot creatures, all of this happening in complete and total silence. There was no field or opening in the forest where anyone could have positioned such an array of lights in any way whatsoever, and yet there they were. A dense stand of old-growth trees extending for miles and miles in every direction as the crow flies. Fried crow. Ugh. And yet they were there, as Michael said. At some point, each of the orbs had returned to the blue light, disappearing into it as quickly as they had appeared, and then the forest went black. No one said a word, including Michael. He was wondering at some point, and for how long, he doesn't know, whether or not he was alone and if it was all a dream. He thought that he might be dreaming and had never come to the forest with his friends at all. It was then that Sammy started to groan and vomit, which kind of snapped all of them out of it. Now realizing that they had dropped their gear and devices on the ground, each of them began to grope around looking for them while tending to Sammy at the same time. They didn't converse about it much until days afterward, collectively not being able to. This sounds like another UFO/Sasquatch case.
Yeah, UFO Bigfoot connection, definitely. Yeah.
That's right up Stan Gordon's alley.
Yeah. Interesting. There in the Sierra Mountains, there have been several cases of that nature that I know of. Okay, next one we go to Indiana. The exact location not given. State of Indiana, June 2020. The time 8 a.m. The witness Candace, involved in other encounters apparently, and lived near the Ohio River, was sitting in her back porch drinking coffee one morning. This is around 8 a.m. when she felt as though she was being watched, and got up and looked around, but saw nothing. She sat back down and looked towards the nearby forest. Suddenly, a beam of light erupted out of the ground. A black figure stepped out of the light. She could not see face, only a black outline of a hairy bipedal creature that she said looked like a silhouette of a Bigfoot will look like, just exactly like that. Remember, this creature Bigfoot stepped out of a beam of light. Interesting.
Yeah.
Right after we read the other case.
Yeah, they're very similar.
Yeah, the creature stood there momentarily and then turned and looked in her direction. It then turned around and stepped back into the light beam and was sucked downwards back into the ground. The light immediately turned off. So this is weird. I haven't noticed this, but there's two cases, one after the other, with a definite connection between UFOs, or maybe that was some kind of portal that the creature came out from. Yeah.
I don't know. It's pretty spooky.
Yeah.
And this is courtesy of KY X-Files podcast, episode 4, Candace and the Dogmen. It sounds like a band.
Candace and the
All
Dogmen.
right. So this next one takes place in Liverpool, Merseyside, England.
Yeah.
For once, I can get my allergies working for me instead of against me, trying to speak like a Liverpoolian.
Like John Lennon. There you go.
Yeah. It's groovy, man.
Yes.
So this takes place in June of 2020, time 23:55 hours, in a car park off Ormskirk Road next to the Aintree Tandoori. A couple, both aged 18, were sitting in a car around late at night, kissing and chatting when the girl looked beyond the car's windscreen and asked, "What the F? Did you just see that?" And the lad said, "See what?" And the girl said, "Some creepy thing, dead thin, has just shot across the car park over there." And then the lad saw what she was referring to. They both saw an abnormally thin and tall creature, almost a silhouette, with glowing eyes, walk with a robotic gait from right to left and then back again. The lad tried to switch on the headlights to see what the thing was and hopefully scare it off, but the headlights didn't work. Then the girl let out a scream. The creature was now alongside the car and was peering in at her and the boy with large glowing blue eyes. The entity then flew back into the darkness, and the lad managed to start the car with a screech of tires. Then the couple departed. Both teens had been completely sober during the entire encounter.
Weird.
This is very creepy.
You got creatures galore tonight.
Yeah, it's a madhouse. A madhouse! Sorry.
I tell you.
It's a madhouse.
Up in here. Okay, the next case, we go to a place called Ricardo Alvarez in Comayagüela, Tegucigalpa in Honduras.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, I'm telling you, wasn't so easy. This is July 2020. It's various times. I guess there were several encounters. Mrs. Maria Elena Rodriguez, mother of 4, reported that her 11-year-old daughter had encountered what she called a small gnome or goblin that threatened to take her to a nearby cave. Mrs. Rodriguez reportedly saw the gnome-like creature and described it as only 40 centimeters in height and wearing boots. Unfortunately, that's all information available, but these little gnome-like creatures are not only seen in Europe or in Britain, they're seen worldwide.
Oh, all over the place. Yeah,
South America.
The Fey folk. And can you translate the source for me?
Yeah, this guy I spoke to him the other day on the phone. His name is Eugenio Tate. He's a Argentinian researcher. He calls himself a scientist. He has a lot of cases that he gets worldwide, and we exchange information.
Los extraterrestres características extrahumanoidad.
The extraterrestrial extra human characteristics. Yeah. He has several cases. Yeah.
All right, this one takes place in Glendale Heights, Illinois, July of 2020, time 2:30 to 3 a.m. The witness had recently been separated from his wife and living in his car while he found a place to call home. His friend had given him permission to park in an apartment parking lot near his home on Robert Court. He would sleep there every night. One night, he woke up and checked his cell phone, and it was 2:30 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. And he looked in the tree line that he was parked directly in front of, and then out of the trees came a white head with a very long, very thin neck. The head was bulbous for its neck and had pale but not translucent skin, but shiny and a veiny look. It sounds like Telosians from Star Trek. The parking lot was decently lit as it was a residential area, but he cannot stress enough that the sheen on the creature wasn't ghostly, just pale matte, but solid looking, and its eyes were black and sunken in an almost striking way. between the contrast of the darkness of the night and its whitish skin and glow. The deep darkness of its eyes with very little refraction coming from them, just a soulless gaze. The witness stared about for a minute and then turned his car on and sped out, not looking back. I don't blame him.
Mm-hmm.
In shock, he drove around endlessly, stopping periodically until morning, trying to rationalize what he had just seen. Ultimately, he ended up going back up and sleeping the next night there and beyond with no issues.
Yeah.
His friends shared a similar experience with the witness. Also, a Mexican couple he spoke with said they'd seen bright orange lights trolling through trees at times when they were cooking. The witness added that the creature had a very small mouth and he couldn't see much past its huge eyes. Now, I'll tell you something, Albert. I've noticed a lot of cases tonight where they have glowing eyes of different colors.
Yeah, true.
And
Me too.
these sorts of paranormal cases seem to be coming a lot faster and more furious than the previous years that we've done.
I tell you, there was like a lot of cases that were documented during 2020 and 2021. Tonight, if we can't get to 2021 and 2022, we could do that next time. Moving along. We'll see.
It's possible.
Yeah, we're only up to July 2020. So it's my turn now, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Next one, we go to Kansas City, Missouri.
It's right in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, July 2nd, 2020, the time 21:45. The main witness and a friend had gone outside in the hopes to see Starlink satellites. Their eyes were to the sky trying to find the train of satellites. Shortly after going outside, they noticed something flying high and focused on it. They thought it was a plane, but then they both saw it flapping. It flew directly over them, about the same height of a Cessna. They could clearly see the wings as it was close to a full moon and there was no cloud coverage. They watched it fly overhead, southwest to northeast. Then, before it disappeared past the tree lines, it turned to go east. Then swiftly changed direction and headed north. It changed direction just like a bird. After discussing with his friend, they realized how big it was. To be the size it was, at the height it was, it would have had to have been the wingspan of a Cessna. It was huge. They both note how brightly illuminated it was by the moon. They started talking about how a bat's wings are translucent, and when backlit from the bright moon, they will appear to as they saw them. They could not see the body of the creature. About 5 minutes later, they began seeing lights appear in the southeastern skies. They appear only in a small window of the sky, moving southwest to northeast, looking star-like. They will appear out of nowhere, start off dim, then grow in brightness to be brighter than any star in the sky, then dim back down and then disappear altogether. These happened sporadically for the next 5 or 10 minutes. There was a total of 15 to 20 that appeared in the same area of the sky, each one at a time, some 50 seconds apart. Some 50 seconds apart, some minutes apart, some higher in the sky, some lower in the sky, but all in the same small window in the sky. As a reference, they had seen a satellite traverse the entire sky west to east, so they knew there was nothing to explain what they saw. It was very bright night, out of which no clouds with no clouds in the sky. So this is from Missouri MUFON Assistant Director Margie Kay. But apparently, what they saw, a winged creature, huge. Then they started seeing UFOs in the same area. Weird.
Yeah, it's interesting how during the pandemic and the lockdown, there were so many sightings of this type of thing. I mean, it's just these 2 years or more cases than we've had for an entire 5-year span, mostly.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I guess we will have to cover 2021 next time. All right, the location for this case is Newcastle, Colorado, July 2nd, 2020, time late night. On Thursday night, the witness and his girlfriend decided to go for a late drive along a winding dirt road miles away from any civilization, Buford Road. They found a private, quiet place to park without a soul in sight, up high in the mountains, giving them an excellent view of the sky in the dead of summer night. After a long day and a long night of adventuring, they both decided to get some shut-eye, camping in his Suzuki. This is where things started getting weird. Neither of them has any recollection of attempting to close their eyes to sleep or falling asleep. However, every time he has an experience, there is a trance-like paralysis state he is always in. He first remembers looking out his driver's side window, seeing a being that was barely able to peek over the car into the window, which was very small in length, not even reaching 4 feet. The body was only a few inches wide, was shaped similar to an old-fashioned iron, having oblong jet eyes with a slit of red sitting in the center. He then looked over to the passenger seat. It felt as if there were an invisible force pushing back on you as you try to move anything to keep you in place, in a state somewhere between reality and dreaming. There was one being sitting on the passenger seat next to him. It appeared to be identical to the same one looking through his window moments before. In the back seat was his girlfriend. The beginning startled the witness so much that he took a swing and struck the entity. Once making full-on contact, the being then disappeared, leaving the witness with a sore hand. The witness was now convinced that it was all very real and not a dream. He managed to focus and break free of his slumber state or trance and take control and began yelling for his girlfriend and pushing on the car horn. Looking outside, they saw a very bright light that emitted a shower of sparks as it dotted across the sky and was gone. The witness adds that this was just one experience of many, so he's a repeater.
A repeater, yeah. So that's kind of a weird entity. Maybe there was a UFO in the area and they came out.
I seem to recall that I believe it was J. Allen Hynek didn't want any single witness cases. He only wanted multiple witness cases because the others he thought would be easily explained away.
And they didn't like repeaters also. And nowadays, most witnesses are repeaters, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they had experiences throughout their lives.
And before we continue, I just wanted to mention to everybody, if you want to be in the running for tonight's giveaway at the end of the show, one of Albert's books, a surprise, but it'll be autographed. Make sure you head to the URL on your screen to enter the giveaway, and you must be present in the chat to be eligible to win. All right, take it away, Albert.
All right, the next one we go to Ukraine. I'm sorry, not the Ukraine. In the Crimea, which is near a place called Ayudag or Bear Mountain in Gursov, Crimea, Ukraine. July 15, 2020. Time was 1:11 a.m. Excuse me. The witness, Valerie, was out in his rowboat late at night. So it's right on the coast there, listening to soft music when he started to fall asleep. Afraid the boat will be carried out into the open sea, he began to row back.
As he was rowing back?
Yeah, as he was rowing back, he heard a splash in the water in the right side of the boat. He first thought it was a dolphin, but when he looked in the direction of the splash, he saw the head of a strange woman sticking out of the water up to her shoulders. The distance from the boat and the woman was only about 5 meters or less. The witness was frightened as it was clear that it was not a human face. There were no swimmers about at this time. The strange woman had a beautiful face and was intently staring at the witness. She had marble white skin or gray-white. Her eyes stuck out the most of all. The pupils were vertical, like those of a cat. She had long blonde hair, which greenish, with a greenish and whitish tint, which hung over her shoulders. Frightened, Valerie grabbed the oar and began to row quickly towards the coast, where there it's a parking lot for the on the coastal slope. That's where he parked his vehicle. As he neared the shore, he jumped in the water and pulled the boat ashore. The witness remains convinced that what he saw was not a human being. This is from researcher Anton Anfalov. So what are we talking about? A mermaid?
So like Thundercats are go or something?
What? No.
Thundercats?
Oh, the face. Well, if you look at the image, yeah, her eyes are blue with vertical pupils. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like
Weird.
the Thundercats.
Yeah.
And although we're not going to show any images, I just wanted to describe what the witness is holding up, his drawing of what the creature looked like. And it's definitely a mantid being, like a huge praying mantis, a life-size praying mantis, 7 feet tall.
Well, that's the next case.
Yeah, the one I'm about to read.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention that first because allegedly the mantid creatures are at the top of the whole scale. Then there are the tall grays. Then there are the little humanoid robotic 3 foot or 3.5 foot tall grays. And allegedly, according to Dr. David Jacobs, the mantid beings, or the insectoids, as he calls them, are behind all of this hybridization stuff.
Strangely enough, the Ukrainian researcher Anton Anfalov said that to me also. He said that the insectoids are running a lot of the show.
Yeah, they're running the show. Also, we have a question from Mr. MH in the chat at Cardinal Sin. Just wanted to check whether Albert tracked down the Jalisco, Mexico 2001 human mutilation case. That case is one of the creepiest humanoid cases on record. Are you familiar?
Yeah, I remember, and he found it for me. I did find it. I got it from a Mexican source that used to have a website that's no longer in operation. But it's a really, really weird case. It's from a website called El Durmiente de Orizaba. There's this is Sid used to run that site, but briefly in Guadalajara, in Jalisco, Mexico, back in March 2001, in the afternoon, a man, now deceased, told investigators that he was standing on the terrace of his home. When he looked down, he saw a strange round vehicle, which he thought at first was a car that had pulled up to the neighbor's house next door. Surprised, he saw at least 10 little men exit the car or vehicle and enter the house in which 6 persons lived in the house of the neighbor. The little men wore tight-fitting red uniforms with black belts. After a few moments, the little men left the house and re-entered the round vehicle, which left quickly. The next day, he noticed that the family had not come out, and when he looked inside, he was horrified to see several body parts strewn around inside the house. According to the witness, the situation was hushed up by the local authorities. Very ominous. It's true, and you know that I could see why they would hush up something like that. Definitely.
And which number was that?
This is back in year 2001 March.
Oh, okay.
It's not a one of the cases we're reading today.
Okay.
Yeah, but he just wanted to for me to find it.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one takes place in Warwick, West Midlands, England. The date is July 16th of 2020. The time is nighttime. 26-year-old Paul Froggatt was returning home from a night shift in a dog food factory warehouse. He rode his bicycle home through the woods in Warwick. Driving through Oakwood Preserve and Blacklow Spinney, He suddenly saw a glowing orange sphere hovering over one horizon in the sky. Paul stopped and took a few pictures. At that moment, the object began to move, and it seemed to Paul pursue him. Soon the cyclist drove into the forest and lost sight of the object. At that moment, a strange dead silence reigned in the forest. Suddenly, Paul saw a huge 2-meter tall praying mantis type creature. It stood on 2 legs, was light green, with a triangular head and large oval black eyes. Paul was immobilized. The man and the praying mantis looked into each other's eyes for several seconds. Froggatt thought the creature was evil and was reading his thoughts, and that it was going to attack him. Shaking with fear, he began to cry. The creature then disappeared. And I have to tell you, when I was young and my mother showed me a praying mantis, the first thing that occurred to me was, if this thing was life-size, it would be really scary.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that. I was very young, but that is really creepy.
Sure is.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more before we have a mod come on with our spinner wheel.
Very good. I'll do the next one. Is from Jefferson County, Pennsylvania, August 2020 afternoon. This is from Stan Gordon also. A hiker walking through woods in Jefferson County during the afternoon saw something that baffled him. About 100 to 200 feet in the distance, he noticed a very tall figure standing between the 2 trees. The area was very dense and not close to public access. As he continued to watch, he realized that what he was seeing was not human, deer or a black bear. The creature moved slightly, then took off running extremely fast down a hillside to his left and did not come near the witness. The witness stated that the creature ran faster than any human could possibly run. Even stranger, he did not hear any sound as he moved through the foliage and rocks. The creature looked to be about 8 to 10 feet tall, and the general shape of the figure was distinct. The arms and legs were narrow, and the arms appeared to be bent at about 20-degree angle and held out straight. The arms did not swing as he moved. The witness also mentioned that the entire time he watched the creature, he looked as though he was out of focus. That's weird. This is from Stan Gordon's UFO Anomalies. So,
Stan Gordon's a great researcher.
Yeah. For years, I used to correspond with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually corresponded with him in an attempt to get him on the show, and then I just lost track of him. But he seemed inclined to come on.
Okay.
For sure. Okay, so this one is North Devon, England, August 2020 in the afternoon. The witness was on holiday in North Devon with her then boyfriend. They walked along in a gorgeous footpath down to a stunning area of coast. As they started taking in the sea views, they both looked up to the very high cliffs to their left. There, in the rocks on the cliff edge, was what looked like a little person. She felt it was male, was dressed in a silver all-in-one suit that was reflecting the midday sun. She thought she was the only one seeing it. Then her boyfriend, who had never seen anything paranormal but was accepting of her beliefs, said, "Do you see that?" He looked astonished. They both agreed it looked like a little person sitting on the edge of the cliff. They couldn't get a better view even with their mobile phone cameras, but needed binoculars. Afterward, she thought about folk tales of sailors seeing fairy gardens on the North Cornish cliffs, and others who had witnessed fairy folk in this wild and rugged coastal areas. Within 3 weeks of returning from the holiday, her life completely changed for the better. She felt this sighting could have been a foretelling of what was to come.
Well, positive sighting again for a change. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can do one more before we bring on the mods with the spinner wheel.
All right, we'll do one more, and then the rest we'll do next time. Yeah, we're going to the rest of 2020 and then 2021. Okay, the next one is a place called Lusby, Maryland, August 7, 2020. The time 2300. The witness was getting ready for bed as she had a nightly meditation routine. She had become spiritual lately and used high vibration crystals to meditate with. She made a communication grid, but has zero recall from the point of finishing the grid. She found herself in a room with a large window that looked over blackness. A man, but with intensely peaceful, calming, overwhelming vibrations, was there. What stuck out most to her was his bright blonde hair, long but sort of spiked, and his bright blonde, almost white eyebrows. They were talking, but in their heads, telepathically. And she got to ask him why they didn't intervene to help us. He said that they will only do so in case of us destroying Earth or other dimensions. Interesting. She felt upset, but then he played her a sideshow in her mind of all kinds of battles, plagues, and wars from the beginning until now, and she knew he meant we as humans have survived so much, and we will likely survive this. She then opened her eyes and was back in her bed in a strange position. She felt like she had not slept, and her night routine had not been done. So this lady went into a meditated state and maybe went to another location. Interesting.
And I think we have time for one or two more.
Okay.
So this one takes place in Pennock, Minnesota, September 17th, 2020 at 19:03 hours. Early in the evening, the witness was at home and she walked into her living room and looked out her window and saw a copper-colored dome-shaped UFO and a reptilian-type entity looking at her. The entity was a mixture of man and reptile and was standing near the UFO, staring at the witness. The next time she knew she was in her living room and she was on the couch, she was incoherent and could not move, and she felt like something in her brain. There was also a smell like an overheating motor.
So
This
maybe
investigation is still in process.
maybe she has some missing time and she couldn't recall what happened. Oh, reptilian. One more.
Yeah, go ahead and take this Polish case.
Next one, we go to Poland. Bieszczady Mountains near Sawos, Poland. End of September 2020. Time was between 1700 and 1800. A resident of Lower Silesia had come with friends to this location. It seems that when the sun sank below the horizon, he noticed a figure flying westwards about 400 meters from him. The figure had the appearance of a typical cosmonaut or astronaut who sat in a sort of armchair. Was wearing a helmet. The helmet was visible and legs resting on something that was protruding. It all took about 20 seconds, and the humanoid figure moved away towards Werla. According to the source, Arek Miazga, he's still seeking additional information and witnesses to the event. So we have here a different type of humanoid, like a astronaut type flying through the air.
Yep.
Interesting.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to the one, the only Canadian Spider-Man.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Albert. Thank you for joining us again. Hi, Cardinal Sin.
You're
Thank you. There's a restaurant next door. I hope the music is not too bad
fine.
in the background.
We can't really hear it.
Great. Okay,
But,
great.
I
I
like
can't
your
take
shirt.
credit for the wheel. Thank you. Anti-derivative Jill has made the wheel. I'll just display the shirt just for a second, if you don't mind.
Sure. No, I don't mind. Cardinal Sin Mod Squad.
Alrighty.
I like the back. It's a pretty cool shirt.
No, it's a high quality shirt.
Sorry.
As you know, I've purchased a few shirts from your merch website, Cardinal Sin. The quality is fantastic. So, and the designs,
so.
especially the the cartoon version of yourself, the Cardinal Sin, the cartoon, which I
the
believe was done
Douglas
by
Nelson
Fed for
one?
Hire. Yeah.
That was Douglas Nelson.
Oh, was it Douglas Nelson?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that was
Yeah.
fantastic. Yep.
That's
So
a
I've got the
very
spinner
cool one.
wheel at your command, sir.
All right, let's bring it.
All right, I'm sharing my screen now.
Okay.
Share audio. Here we go.
And you're getting a lot of love from the chat.
Oh, you've got an amazing chat. Good to see you all. There
Don
we go.
McDouglas says, nice shirt. Tiger Stripe says, I like that shirt. Radioactive says, that's no ordinary shirt. That's a staff shirt.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll go ahead.
Do you have the shared screen?
What's that?
Do you have the shared screen?
Yeah, I'm just going to bring it on now.
Yep. Okay, great.
All right. So
Full
this
screen.
is good because we had some people sign up for the giveaway of the autographed book from
Yep.
Albert. And again, Albert, thanks very much. That's very generous of you.
You're welcome.
And this is the part that I don't look forward to because it reminds me of The Exorcist with my head spinning around and makes me nauseous.
You're going to get dizzy. I
Okay.
hope you've taken your medication.
I have. Medication taken. Let it roll.
Okay. On your command, let's go.
Let's go.
Engage.
Engage. Phantom
Phantom
Boomer.
Oh, Phantom Boomer.
Woohoo.
Congratulations.
Awesome. Congratulations, Phantom Boomer.
So Phantom Boomer knows how to get in touch with me, but just for purposes of the show, I encourage everyone who wins to email me ill@sunflower.com so you can get your details to me and then I can get them to Albert.
Correct.
Tiger Stripe says Boomer. So congratulations, Phantom Boomer. That's very, very awesome.
Congratulations.
And let's check in with you, Canadian Spider-Man. How is your Mexico vacation going?
Oh, just discovering all kinds of different foods, meeting a lot of different people, practicing my horrible Spanish, and just swimming a kilometer every day in the Pacific.
Nice.
Can't go wrong there. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Eating what did we have today? Sailfish. Yeah, we had sailfish on the barbecue.
Nice.
Yeah, sail and marlin. We had a big hunt.
Oh, he's stuck.
He said his internet was back.
Oh, yeah. There you go. So,
Sulfur says,
okay.
sounds awful. Okay, well, Canadian Spider-Man is dead, so I will pluck him out. But thanks very much for the help, Canadian Spider-Man. Albert, is there anything that you would like to plug before we wrap up tonight?
Well, remember I have my books in Amazon, and I'm working on a website that should be coming out hopefully soon, where everybody can see my latest database of cases there, almost 30,000 cases for everyone to see and peruse.
And that's going to be online again?
Yes, that's my plans.
Do you have an ETA?
February? I'm thinking by April.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Let me make a little mark here. We just covered the Polish case, right?
Yeah, so we'll take it from there.
We'll start with 42.
Yeah, next week, and then we'll go in 2021. Okay.
Let me just make it.
Not next week, next month. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
And Gil, remind me. I'm gonna send you my files so you can have them all. Okay. Also.
Okay. I think I've had all the ones that you've done so far.
I know you know how to. I mean, I know you like to read them through.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's
So,
I mean, it's a time suck, but it's fascinating.
no, it is. Thanks for having me again, and we'll see you next time. Keep
All
in
right,
touch.
sounds good.
All right.
Thanks for being on the show again. You're a fan favorite, Albert.
You're welcome.
We always love having you on. So we'll see you,
Thank you.
next month.
Yes.
And it's Cardinal Sin out.